Got a Tascam DA-P1 DAT portable in for service. This one, the complaint is, doesn't rewind. Let's check out and see what the problem is. I got a couple more of these Tascam DA-P1s in from a client who's sent me a few before, and these ones he wants me to check them out and also provide them with a power supply because he doesn't have an adapter for them. Now I have a DA-P1 that I can use for testing for the power supply, but what we're going to do when we're done with this is we're going to connect an external power supply to it so that it's permanently hardwired, because of course it's got the wrong jack on there, but he supplied me with a couple of adapters as well, which should provide sufficient power to power these up. These are 7.5 volt 2 amp output, which is more than enough to operate one of these units. We'll check it out first using my original power supply, as I have an original supply here. So we'll check it out first with that, make sure that the deck is working, get the mechanism working first of all, and then mod it for anything else it may need. So say I don't know what's going on with these ones, whether they need belts or what. I haven't looked at them yet, so let's check it out and see what this one's doing. I'll first open up the cassette compartment just so I can observe when I load a tape and see what it does. Seems to load correctly. Will this one play? Let's turn on the power to the amplifier. So this one's working. At least it's playing. Ah, it's not rewinding. How about fast forward? So it is fast forwarding, it's just not. Well, now it is. Why didn't it rewind before? We may have an idler that's slipping. Yeah, see, it's not rewinding now. So, and it's going to eat my tape because it's not going to thread the tape back. So we have to fix the tape now. Wonderful. Another crease in my tape. Let's see why this is not rewinding. Nice thing about these mechanisms is you can trick them into running without a tape in them by just closing it down and pushing down the pin switches, which will activate the mechanism. So now I can run it through the motions and see what is meshing and what is not. So I don't know if you guys can see that or not, but if you look down here into the mechanism, we'll try and get some light in there. We're going to watch for this little pendulum gear here, and I'm sure it's cracked. I'm sure that this gear is cracked. In fact, I can see the crack in it right now. So I can see the problem right now. It's the same as it happens on all of them. There's a little crack right there, and it's causing this gear to come apart. So we need to take this mechanism apart so that I can fix that. I will say that the rubber coating on this one is not as bad as some of the ones that I've seen. Some of them have been just horrible. It's starting to go on this one, but it's not to the point where it's just sticky like some of them, like a lot of them have been. In fact, I think all the ones I've seen so far, both the TIAC and the Tascam versions, have all been just terrible. The rubber material, including mine. The one I've got, I've put tape on it just so that it at least doesn't stick to everything. I just put packing tape over it. I just got my electric bill today, and I'm still having heart palpitations from the size of it over a little cold snap that we had between me running the 4800 watt or 4.8 kilowatt heater in the workshop here, which I hopefully won't have to run again until next winter. It's starting to warm up a bit, but between me running that to keep warm out here, because we had temperatures that were below normal for what we normally get here, and they're just heating the house, and I'm sure my son with his computer is probably contributing to a good portion of the bill, because he's a gamer and he's got himself a fancy gaming computer that he built, which is got a very powerful graphics processor in it, you know, because he had to have the very best. What's holding this up? This should pop off. Oh, there's a screw in the bottom. I almost forgot about the two down here. Between his fancy gaming computer and all the crap that was going on in the background on his computer, and I know for sure that there was crap going on in the background because he decided he wanted a bigger hard drive, and he had to reinstall Windows, and because he wanted to change out his primary drive from a 512 to a terabyte SSD, so he had to reinstall his Windows, and in doing so didn't turn off the share my internet connection with the rest of the world so that Windows can update using my bandwidth. Used up a couple of terabytes of data, but I'm sure his poor computer was running 24 hours a day, just burning through the power. And just so that you guys know that I'm not bullshitting you, check this out. Yeah, there's my electric bill for 2 months, $1,037. Ouch! This is how they break down our electric usage here, because see, we're penalized if we go over a certain price. Our previous government that we had in place decided that we want to force people into conserving energy. So we're going to charge you one rate, which has continued to climb. It used to be 6 cents a kilowatt hour, now it's 9.3. But we're going to charge you one rate until you get to 1,332 kilowatts. And then we're going to charge you 14 cents for everything over and above. So I went and put a heat pump in 20 years ago, which is, of course, now what they're telling everybody. Oh, we want you to get off natural gas, and we want you to get off oil, and we want you to put on a heat pump. Well, when you're running a heat pump, it's going to chew up electricity to extract heat from the outside air. That's how they work. It's going to put you over that limit every time. And the fact that I also have 2 electric cars, so I'm not going to the gas station and paying $1.80 a liter. I'm paying, 14 cents a kilowatt for my electricity. So I'm offsetting burning natural gas, and I'm offsetting burning gasoline in my vehicle. And I'm getting really, really, really hit hard because they haven't gone to a time of day. There's all the talk that we're going to go to a time of day billing where we'll charge you a cheaper rate at night and we'll charge you more money, in the evening, which would be perfect. They've been talking about this for years, but nothing's happened. Okay, I'm going to remove the mechanism on this unit because it just makes it a little bit easier, I think, to work on if we take the mechanism out. So there's a couple screws and some connectors that need to be unplugged. 4 screws that hold the chassis in place. Now, normally my electric bill is normally around 800. Is usually what I see on an average month. And I know that every 2 months, sorry, that's for 2 months, not 1 month. Well, $400 a month is what normally it sits. But say over that cold snap, I used an extra $200 worth of energy over what would normally be what I would expect it to be, which is ridiculous. undo that one, and there's a couple more in the back here I've got to undo. And undo that one, and this one, and this one down here, and there's a couple back here that also need to get undone. Actually, there's one that I think I got to take out from the bottom. Yeah, because it's zip tied on here. I forgot I got to take the bottom off this thing, so we'll just do that as well. Okay, these are the plugs that need to come out on the back here, and then the mechanism will just lift straight out. Get a new belt on this one. We'll open the mechanism. Catches here. I need to remove the mechanism itself so that I can work on it. I'm going to remove the preamp as well, just to get it out of the way. And unplug it. Okay, I need to remove the two cut washers and of course the springs. Otherwise we'll have the springs flying all over the place. So there's one spring out of the way and the other spring here. Get that one out of the way too. And now I can remove the cut washers that hold on the cassette holder. Now I can get at the transport here, and in particular this little gear here that is cracked, which is cracks on all of them. You can see it. I don't know how clear it's coming across on camera, but there is a crack right there. So I'll remove this portion of the deck. This is just two screws that hold down the top piece of the bracket. Then I can lift off this bracket. Just lifts out like that. Trust me, it does just lift out. And I now have to take off this other little cut washer right here. There's a spring on this one, so you gotta be careful. Otherwise the spring, when you take the cut washer off, the spring is going to disappear. So this one comes off next. Try not to lose it. Spring out of the way. And now this will this lift out? No, it won't. I got to take out these other two as well. I got to take out these two idler assemblies, and then this will lift out of the way. I think that's all I got to take out is these two, or at least one of them. It's a very small gap here, and I don't want to lose this once I got my finger over top of it to prevent it from flying away. There it is, out of the way. Now I can lift off this idler assembly. And now this gear should lift out of the way. Looks like those pads are starting to fall off on here too. I've got to re-glue these back on. The brake pads are coming off. As you can see. Got to pop that brake pad out as well. This arm. Gotta take this other one out as well. You can see that this has come right off now, off this gear, off this wheel. And there's a washer that goes on here as well, that sits on top. There's the little gear. And then there's a little washer that came off there. Let's just get that out of the way. There it is. Okay, so this washer sits on top of here. And this fits in through this piece that's cracked. Pushes through like that. Now that's normally all the way flush with the top, and it of course pulls its way down. So we need to secure this, and probably the best way to do this is to glue it. I'm going to use some super glue on this one. We'll just put a drop. Remember the crazy glue? They gave you the little pin. Yeah, you use to open it up again once it's sealed up. Put a bit of glue on there, and then I'll take the gear assembly and I'll push it through from below. Make sure my pin is in there. And now we just have to let this stuff set, and hopefully that will hold it for a while. While this is setting up, I'm going to glue the two pads back on for the brakes. let that set up for a bit, and then we'll put the thing back together and see what it does. So in order to fit that pendulum gear back in, I've actually got to remove the supply side brake arm so I have clearance so that I can put that arm assembly with the gear on it back in place. Which is a challenge in itself, because there's no room to work in here. There we go. That one's out of the way. Let's lift that one up and grab a dental pick. Lift that one out of the way. Okay, now I can lift this up a little bit, get it out of the way, so that I can fit the pendulum gear back in and get it into position like that. Now I can put the brake back into position again, pull that back into position and drop it down, put the cut washers back on again. Okay, that one's on. Let's get the next one on here. Put the two clutches back into place. One there, and the other one over here. And their respective little black cut washers that go back on top to hold them in place. There, I think I got it on. Okay, that one's on. And now we get a spring that goes on next, and another cut washer that goes over top of this one to hold this piece in place. One spring and one more cut washer. Oh, come on. It'd be easier to stick it to my finger and stick it on that way. There. Okay, that's got that piece back in place. Next is the cover. There we go. And a couple screws to hold that down. And then next goes the cassette basket. Quitting time, 4 o'clock. Oops. Gotta go in like this under here, and then this side's gotta go over like that, and it will eventually pop into place and drop into place like that onto these 2 clips, and then these big cut washers will go over the side here to lock it in place. And then we've got the 2 springs that are used to open the mechanism. Pull the springs back in place over their appropriate clips. There's one, and then the other one goes on the other side. There the 2 springs are that open the mechanism. Now it's time to put the mechanism back in the cabinet, plug everything in. Oh, yeah, I guess I better put the preamp back on first. That might help, right? Preamp screws on with its 2 screws on the side here. And plug the head drum back in, and then the unit itself drops back in place, but I got to hook up these side connectors first. There's a few of them here that are not the easiest to get at because of the length of the cable, but with the back plugs undone, it's a little easier. We just start with the bottom one first, and then this front one. Followed by the top, and then we can feed the other ones down. Bring them down below the board. Plug them in. Last, plug in the output from the preamp. And then drop the chassis back in. And then once we've secured the chassis with the 4 screws, then it's ready to test. And then I'll hook up the permanent power supply. And hopefully that will fix this one up. And then I can get on to the next one, which will be a separate video because it's a completely separate unit with a different problem. Or maybe it's the same problem. I guess we'll find out once we get into it. But came from the same guy that's collecting a bunch of these. This is probably the fourth or fifth one he sent me. Maybe even more. Okay, let's see how rewind works this time. It should work fine. Yes, rewind works. And playback. Might help if I plug in the audio output. And we should have sound right about now. Skip forward. Cue it back. Full fast forward. Yeah, that's working. Rewind. And eject. Alright, this one is fixed. Let's hook the permanent power supply up. And I can tap it in right down on here. I think that will work. And I'll just have to solder the wires right down to the battery terminals here. And that should make this thing work. It's in the operate mode, and I can actually probably solder it right down to the bottom of this DC jack. It'd be just as easy to do that. Because we got a ground, and it tells me right now which one they are. Ground and the 7.2 volts is these two, and that one's ground. Well, we can see which one's ground. That's the positive terminal there for the battery, and that's the positive terminal there for the power. The power cords are actually quite short on the adapters, but took the end off the plug off the end. We'll tin the wires. Obviously red is positive and black is negative. At least we would hope that that's what they are. I'm going to trust that they are correct. Negative, I can just ground right here to the negative terminal from the battery, and then the positive, I'm going to take it right over to the positive terminal where the power connector went in from the power supply. Right there. And the negative one over here, which is to the negative terminal of the plug, which, as you know, as you can see, it's connected to the same as the negative terminal on the battery. I could have used the positive terminal on the battery, but what I don't know is whether the battery was 6 volts or 7.5. I know that the adapter is 7.5, so that's what it requires. So, but say the battery itself may have only been a 6 volt. I'd have to go and look at mine to see whether it was a 6 or a 7.5 volt battery. And obviously, if the battery was 6 volts, that input would be designed for 6 volts, not 7.5. But anyway, put the base on. I'm going to screw it down so that the wire is going to come out from the battery terminal. We'll run the wire out like this. That way, it will be locked in place. The battery cover will hold the wire in place so it doesn't get tugged on and ripped out of it, and try to keep the battery cover to lie flat. So that's about the only way I think if we can do it is to do that, and then at least now the battery cable or the power cable will lie flat. And now I can put the last screws in to the cabinet. And sound in about 3, 2, 1. there we go. That one's done. Put the top cover on it. Finish this one up and move on to the next one. Incidentally, when you're putting these together, there are 2 screws that are longer than the rest of the longer screws, and those are for those 2. Right? There are short screws, mid screws, and long screws. Short screws, mid screws, and the 2 longest screws go to those 2. Now this unit's back together. Power supply is permanently attached. You can put the tape door back on, and we'll give it one last test. Okay, I'm just going to do a recording. Record lights on. This one only does 48 and 44.1. It does not have an LP speed on it, just SP. So I'm at 48. I can switch down to 41. We'll see it switch on playback. So there's 48. Oh, it's going to go to pause. I guess I have to go back into record. There we go. And now it's into 44.1. So it didn't do it on the fly. It actually stopped the tape from moving on the switch from 48 to 44.1, but hey, we'll be able to see it switch over here. So let's just stop the recording and we'll play it back. There's no absolute time code because I recorded on a section of tape that was beyond where there was a recording. So it doesn't do time code in that case. It just does it in normal mode. So there's the 48 kilohertz playback, and it will switch to 44.1. Obviously you'll notice it when it switches. And there's where it switched. Okay, this records. I'm happy. I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.